Greetings and welcome everyone to StoryHive Creator Chat, Black Excellence on Screen. My name is Joan Jenkinson and I'm the Executive Director of the Black Screen Office. Our live stream is coming from the traditional and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh nations, as well as Treaty 6 territory, Edmonton and Toronto, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We would also like to acknowledge those of us who came here forcibly, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. Therefore, we honor and pay tribute to the ancestors of African origin and descent. The Black Screen Office is really happy to be a partner with StoryHive on this project. To give you a little bit of background on the Black Screen Office, we have been around since November 2020, so we're still a very young organization. Our goal is to make Canadian industry practices and policies equitable and free of anti-Black racism. And we work collaboratively with decision makers, funders, broadcasters, and other agencies to develop tools and strategies to enable system level change. And we work to empower Black Canadians working within the screen industries to thrive, to be fully employed, to own successful companies, and to own their own intellectual property. And of course, we want to be able to share our stories in Canada and around the world. TELUS STORYHIVE, our partner, supports storytellers in BC and Alberta, and they support their creativity. They help them to accelerate their development through funding, distribution, and exhibition of content. So this is the very first Black Creators Edition, and it's again being presented by StoryHive in partnership with the Black Screen Office. And this edition is providing $600,000 in funding for 30 emerging content creators in BC and Alberta. And to get to the 30 was a big job because there are a lot of applications. There was a lot of interest in the program. And this is a really amazing start for a career to be able to have this kind of funding and knowing that your program is going to eventually be broadcast. So we have some very special guests with us today, and they've been selected from among the 30. So they've not only been selected from the hundreds and now the 30, but now we have 3 of them who are here with us today. And they are Janessa St.Pierre, Arlo, Maverick, and Stephen K. And I'll turn it over to Janessa, Arlo, and Stephen just to introduce themselves. So we'll start with Janessa.
Hi, I'm Janessa St.Pierre. My pronouns are she, her. I am from the unceded lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I am a multidisciplinary artist and filmmaker here, and my project is a drama called Hair or No Hair.
Excellent. Arlo?
My name is Arlo Maverick. My real name is Marlon Wilson, but I go by the stage name Arlo Maverick. I'm a filmmaker and hip hop artist here in Edmonton, Alberta, Treaty 6 territory. And the project I'm working on is a documentary called Untouchable Crew, which is about the 1980s hip hop breakdance scene here in Edmonton that most people aren't aware of. So I'm hoping to bring awareness to that and also just bring awareness towards Black culture here in the province because a lot of people aren't aware of it. Thank you.
Stephen?
Hi, I'm Stephen K. I'm from Vancouver, BC, and I'm a writer, director, filmmaker, coming from the East Coast to the West. And my project is it's an action adventure about a Congolese youth and his uncle, who was a journalist trying to solve cases in Vancouver, BC.
Excellent, thank you. So I'm really excited to hear more about those projects. Maybe Janessa, you can tell us about Hair or No Hair. I see from your look that there might be a little statement happening. So I'm excited to hear about your project.
Yeah, well, yeah, my project is Hair or No Hair. It's a narrative piece. It's about a character named Belle Davis, loosely based on myself, because I have alopecia. And Hair or No Hair is basically a short film that's going to be a glimpse into the journey of alopecia. For me, it was a really integral and important time for me when I chose myself. I've been on this journey. I don't know if it will ever end, but I specifically remembered the start. And I feel like that moment is super important for people to maybe get a glimpse of and understand. It's really just an experience I've never seen on screen before, especially exploring it within a Black woman specifically. Hair is such a big thing in our culture. There's so much shame and guilt wrapped up in what is on our heads all the time. So this story is really about breaking all of that down and challenging everyone, challenging why that is. And yeah, I'm just really excited to bring that to the screen because I've never seen a character that has looked like me before. And I know that a lot of other alopecians are going to be very happy about seeing this type of representation. So yeah.
You said it's a drama?
Yes, yeah, it's a drama.
Is it a short film or is it a pilot for something?
Yes,
or?
it's a short film, and yeah, it's really just a glimpse into this woman's life of when she decides, I've been wearing wigs and covering up for too long, and it's the moment that she decides it's time to not do that anymore. And there's a lot of things in society that kind of bring up those ideas, especially for me. So I kind of want to bring up those moments and show those moments to people.
That's great. Like, especially with Black women, hair is such a thing. It's a trauma from the time that you're born.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of stuff around that. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, thank you.
So Arlo, what is Untouchable Crew?
Okay, so Untouchable Crew was a super group of b-boys within the 80s that were formed after a breakdance competition took place here, where who from Winnipeg came in and essentially, like, I don't want to say demolished, but somewhat demolished the b-boys that were here. And it kind of forced the community to actually bond together, where prior to that, a lot of the like key b-boys and b-girls were actually in silos, just working on their own thing, working with their own crews. So that kind of formed a community based off of this situation where the city kind of had to unite in order for them to not have this happen again. So yeah, that's pretty much what it is.
So who are the Untouchable Crew? Does it refer to a particular group?
Yes. So some of the people involved in it were Don Joyce, who is, if you're in the Edmonton music community, Don Joyce is someone who's worked within radio, he's worked within television. He's one of the earlier Black people who are actually moving within the media space, having his own TV show, having his own radio show, and doing his best to make sure the Black faces were on television, even though it wasn't a major network or anything like that. He's one of the key people, as well as Darren Jordan, who has become a curator for an event here called 5 Artists, 1 Love, which just celebrated 15 years. Another gentleman by the name of Barry Curtis, whose son is one of the key community advocates here in the city by the name of Kaz Mega. So there's it was a super crew that still till today, like the remnants of what they created are still impacting the community.
So is it a musical documentary?
Yes, to an extent. Untouchable Crew wasn't a musical group, but because of the fact that we're looking at the 1980s and the introduction of breakdance culture to the city, it will essentially chronicle that, but it's not necessarily about a specific music act. It's more so about this b-boy crew that created a culture that would end up impacting generations to come, where in the 90s we see breakdance culture reemerge, and then in the 2000s, and obviously it's exploded once again. But yeah, with Untouchable Crew, it was essentially the who's who of breakdance in the 80s.
Yeah, so I meant to say dance. I said music, but sounds
No,
really
it's okay.
amazing. I love that. First of all, the time period's great, and break dances is always cool to watch. So that should be very exciting. So Stephen, can you tell us about the adventures of TC the Kid?
Yeah, the Adventures of TC the Kid is about this young kid who's the son of a diplomat who gets sent to live in Vancouver with his kind of like distant uncle, who used to be a former kid detective, and he kind of learns about Vancouver and kind of like solves cases and learns more about his Congolese heritage in Vancouver and also the community of Vancouver while he's there. Yeah, it's like a mystery adventure project that I've always wanted to write about because
Is it a live
I'm a
action?
huge.
Is it a live
Oh
action?
yeah, live action for sure. Live action for sure.
And this
Yeah.
one that you're doing now, is it a pilot for something or a short film or?
It's a pilot. It's a pilot. You know, it's a pilot for hopefully becomes a series that kind of like helps put Congolese talents in the English West, and showcases a bit more of them because there's really not many of us in the English West performing or anything. So I'm one of the few. So
Yeah.
that's one of the.
So at the Black Screen Office, we're just in the middle of doing an audience research study. And one of the things that's come out is that there really is a thirst for children's programming, and particularly those that have good role models for kids. There's so few shows that have, especially Canadian shows that have Black kids in it that you can see as role models. So that sounds like it will be a great addition and really needed right now. So it's, yeah. So what does this
Sorry,
story, sorry, say that again?
sorry, go ahead. I'm just.
Yes, your timing's good. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Okay. What does the StoryHive grant, mentorship, training, distribution, and all the things that you're going to get in this program, what does it mean to your career? I'll start with Arlo.
I think it's really important that the mentorship has been factored into the funding, because one of the things, I've been fortunate to get a lot of grants over the years, but one of the things that I think is different with this one is that there is a focus on mentorship, because a lot of times you're given money and you're kind of like navigating through this whole landscape of, okay, well, whether it's in film or music, you're trying to create these projects, so on and so forth. But the mentorship, I think, is so important because we have someone that we can actually bounce ideas off of and go to who have experience, especially because of the component of like having people from our community who are mentors as well too, because it's one thing to be a filmmaker and get mentorship from someone who is just in the world of film, but it's also another thing to get someone who has experience dealing with film from the Black perspective, because our experience is very different and our experiences are very new and very nuanced in a lot of ways. So I think that having that mentorship is important. And obviously the funding is great because at the end of the day, like StoryHive might be creating a whole new generation of Black filmmakers, which can completely shift how our narrative is being told in mainstream media. Now we're getting not only financing, but we're also getting tangible tools that allow us to actually become better filmmakers and become better at telling our stories, so we don't have to rely on other people from other communities to tell our stories and hope that they get it. We could be the ones telling our story because we get it,
Yeah. Again, like holding on to that intellectual property is so important. And even as you're starting now, you need to think about like, how do I hold on to it? How do I keep this as my own and within my, or at least within my community, and finding, the right producers and people to work with so that we do kind of bring up and raise up our own community in the industry.
100%.
So what about you, Janessa?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Arlo just said. I'm really looking forward to the mentorship aspect of this grant. But this grant in general was a dream of mine. I haven't gotten any grants before, so this has been just a dream of mine, and I'm just so happy to have gotten it. But then on top of that, not only is it this amazing grant, but it's also within this like community aspect of Black filmmakers, which is something else that I've been yearning for as a filmmaker. I just wanted to see and be around other Black filmmakers. So that has just been great, being integrated into this community, especially the Storyhive community. That's what I'm really, really happy for and excited for, is to build those connections, because like, as Arlo said, it feels like it's building a generation. Like it feels like history, that all of these people are able to create these unique stories and share them and actually have them be out there and be seen. So I'm just happy to be part of it.
I have to say, I was really surprised when we, put out the call that there are so many Black people who were actually in the region and involved in the industry. So, I mean, we're all thrilled to see, like, people sort of almost come out of the woodwork, and to have an opportunity to really come together to form that community. And the people you meet now are the kind of the people who you may throughout your career move up with and become more involved in projects together as you move forward. So I think that's a really dynamic and exciting part of this project. So what does it mean for you, Stephen?
Just to, what Janessa and Arlo said, that's a part of it as well too. But for me, like I said, going back to me being one of the few Congolese filmmakers in the West, that's a very important thing for me to kind of be able to tell our story from our side, especially in the diaspora, because we don't get a chance to tell our story as Congolese people, and even though what happens in Congo affects a lot of people outside the Congo, we don't have a lot of voices out there, a lot of representation for us to look at and be like, oh, like I can connect to that, And for me, I feel like it was a blessing to have this grant, to be able to put my work in the ethos, and maybe even like trigger something later on to maybe a younger filmmaker or writers and from my region to be like, oh, if he's doing it, maybe I can do it too.
Yeah. Can you say a little bit more about that, about what you hope to take away and what you hope the audience will take away from your watching your show?
I hope my hope is like, they appreciate that you see, another side of Blackness, or African culture, and kind of see like, because it's just add to this, like when I came to Canada as a kid, it was that was the first time I was introduced as Black. And that was weird. Like since that was kind of like stuck with me growing up, because in the Congo you're Congolese, or in Africa, parts of Africa you're Nigerian, you're Ghanaian, you're this, you're that, you're all that before you're seen as Black.
Right.
And so it was when I got here, it was interesting that happened. So I'm hoping that with this project, people are, have a little more, get more detail, and when they see like, oh, like they won't just see like a Black man or a Black woman, they'll see, yeah, I think he's Congolese, or I think he's Nigerian, or I think he's, they're seeing more layers to this person than just the color of their skin.
Yeah, I think audiences are really thirsting for complexity, so that we're not just, these stereotypes or token characters in somebody else's show, but that we, have full lives and, different levels of education, and we live in different places, some are rich and poor, that we are, as individuals and as communities, as complex as anyone else. And I think it's really exciting that, at this moment in time and moving forward, we'll be seeing more of that. And I just know that audiences will be really happy to see that. Janessa, what do you hope that audiences will take away from your program?
I really hope that people will take away, basically, I hope that it just challenges their superficial notions of what hair means and what baldness means to people. I really hope that it shifts a lot of things in people's heads of how they view it, how they treat people who have alopecia. I hope that it maybe gives them insight into what not to do, what not to say, maybe some tips on how to support somebody who is going through hair loss and baldness. And I just hope it brings humanity to somebody who looks like me, to Black women. We're complex in so many ways, and this experience is so specific. So I'm just really hope that they opens their minds to this new thing.
Specific but universal in a lot of ways. I mean, there's so many things as you know, as human beings that affect us, that that we all deal with in different ways. But at the core of it is a story about self-exploration, your own personal identity, and how you live in the world. So I think it will speak to a lot of people. How about you, Stephen? What do you want audiences to take away from your program? No, sorry, I meant to Arlo. Stephen already told us.
For my project, I'm hoping that people will begin to see the richness and diversity of the music community that we have here in Edmonton. I've been fortunate enough to work within radio, campus radio here in Edmonton, where I've been privy to just how talented our city is. And this, in addition to other projects that I'm working on, are projects where I'm hoping to just raise awareness and create opportunities for Black music here in Alberta. Unfortunately, there are a lot of gatekeepers who have made it so that a lot of Black artists have to leave the province. But through this project and through other projects that I'm working on that kind of create their own metaverse, I guess you could say, I'm hoping to just create, again, just awareness that there is Black creatives who are out here creating, whether it be in the b-boy section, whether it be R&B artists, whether it be hip hop artists, whether it be producers or filmmakers, and kind of create, like, in a way, like the same way Spike Lee had his movies, where it's just like you get to see the introduction of a young Denzel or a young Wesley Snipes, so all of a sudden, like, this becomes the platform for a lot of these people to grow their careers and create awareness that there is talent both in front of the camera and behind the camera, and also provide opportunities. Because at the end of the day, like, as a community, we often look to other communities saying that they should be creating opportunities for us. But I think that when we are put in positions like this, we have to create opportunities for each other in order for us to actually grow something that's sustainable.
Right. So you obviously have lots of stories to tell. So what drives you to tell those stories?
Knowing that they're not being told, knowing that they won't be told until someone decides to do so. There are people who are so fascinating, who have these great stories and have done so much. And with the pandemic, we've seen some people pass away, and it's just like those stories were never told, and that's because someone was waiting for someone else to actually tell that story. And we, as a community, we can't wait on other people to tell our stories, because A, they often don't get them right, and B, sometimes they don't feel that they're important. But there are so many stories that so many stories that need to be told that aren't being told. And so whether it's with or without grant funding, I think that we have to form as a community. And even after this whole project is done, I think that it's important for us to reach out to the other Black creators and be like, hey, I'm working on a project, or are you working on a project, and support one another and see if it's possible for us to work collectively, because Storyhive is in a way created a database for West Coast Black filmmakers that wasn't there before. So I think it's one of those things where we can't rely on other people to tell our stories, and it's not on them to tell our stories, it's on us to tell our stories. And if we're given the access to grant funding and mentorship, then we have to then take that and then start creating our own thing.
Well, just to say, though, that, within the Canadian context, we have funding bodies and agencies, provincial and federal, that our tax dollars go into, that specifically there to make Canadian content. So I think it's great to be entrepreneurial, and you have to be entrepreneurial to get anything made. But I think it's also important to get to know the system, get to know Telefilm and Canada Media Fund, and as your local provincial organization broadcasters must make Canadian content and exhibit it. That's part of their conditions of license. So I suggest really getting to know that system, and yes, work with people who look like you and people who understand your passion and your stories, but also use the system to get it made, I think is an important thing. So Janessa, I imagine you have other stories to tell too. What drives you as a storyteller?
For me, I'm super passionate about feeding my inner child. I feel like I didn't get to see a lot of representation for Black women when I was younger, not really in an authentic and real and complex way. So I'm just really passionate about making Black women and femmes the center of the stories I tell. That's a really big thing for me. I think we deserve to be represented on screen in an authentic and complex way with somebody who knows the experience. And I think that we just deserve to be represented as people who are just people. We just live, we just are, we are just being. So I'm just super passionate about just telling stories, but the main character happens to be a Black woman. Yeah.
We just released a report at the Black Screen Office called Being Seen, directives for creating authentic and inclusive content. And what you're saying is such a big part of what the report is all about. We had 400 people in different focus groups who, so many of them, like everybody coming from their own individual perspective, but we heard collectively how hurtful it's been to, be too reduced to a stereotype and to never seeing yourself. There's this saying that if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I think now is the time where, we have to make sure that people see it. And especially, as I said, mentioned, younger people, that, they can aspire to more than what we've been reduced to on television and in the movies.
Yes.
So Stephen, what drives you to tell stories?
I think the barriers they build up. I think growing up, you see a lot of things where they'll have stories where it seems like, this group doesn't belong here. There's no place for this group here, like in space or whatever. And I kind of want to challenge all that. That excites me because it makes for newer stories and newer avenues to tell these stories. And I like that, just going in a genre that's never been known to have, people like us, or seen or heard, and just being like, all right, well, here's this, just to shake it up, and see what the reaction is. That's like,
yeah.
That's my, like, besides my love for story, but and telling and naturally telling stories, but just also, the rebellious part of just them saying you can't, this, it doesn't make sense for you to be here. But no, but now we are here, so it's good.
Yeah.
That's that's where I'm coming from.
Right. So I just want to ask all of you, what is your biggest inspiration? Let's start with Janessa.
I'd say my biggest inspiration is the people around me. I say my family, my mom, my sister, but truly it's basically other alopecians like me. I really am inspired by them and just the fact that we have been on this journey for so long and yet there's not that much representation. And the strong nature of somebody who goes through hair loss and alopecia, it's not a choice, but there's a hardiness that comes along with it, and those type of people and those people that have inspired me to be here and to just bear my baldness. I'm basically doing all of this back for them. Yeah, they truly inspire me, especially for this project. In general, I mean, Black women filmmakers everywhere just doing it inspire me. Yeah.
That's great. And Arlo, what's your biggest inspiration?
I think my biggest inspiration is probably just the knowing what is possible. Knowing what is possible and knowing that people are going to doubt that it is possible for it to happen. That is something that pushes me and drives me, because I see the wealth of talent. I see the wealth of stories that need to be told. And I know that there's people who are skeptical in regards to, like, even when in my pitch video, I said Edmonton hip hop, yes, there is such a thing, because I want that to be something where 15, 20 years from now, the idea of being Black, being creative, being from Alberta is not something that is oxymoronic, but something that's just like, it's as common as thinking of Black people in Toronto, you know? And there's a history of Black people who have been here from the early 1900s that most people aren't even aware of. And part of that goes to stories not being told, or people having to leave from the province to be in places that they were accepted. And I think that it's time that we stop moving and start creating within our own environments and do the impossible. So that, and obviously the community around me, those are probably the biggest inspirations.
Speaking of impossible, I don't know if you've seen the premiere of The Porter, the new series. It's about porters who started a union in Montreal in the 1920s. But it's shot in Winnipeg, which is great. So they had to build up the community of Black people there. It's a team, a creative team of writer, showrunners, directors who worked collaboratively and without a hierarchy to create this exquisite series for CBC. And you know, when I watch it, I always think the talent was always there, you know, and somebody finally said, here's a good chunk of money to make so that you can make something really good, and not, being given up an opportunity, but not given enough money to actually make it look, to make it competitive. So I'm super excited about that, because it really shows that the talent is there. It's always been there, and it's probably one of the best Canadian shows I've ever seen. So if you haven't seen it, I suggest watching it. I don't work for CBC, but I'm really touched by this show. Stephen, when you're looking for a project, besides, the one that you're working now in general, when you're looking for something new, what are you looking for? Like, what are the ingredients?
I like to sometimes mix genres, seeing where I can take it, seeing where it has been taken, and the ingredients usually has to be either like there has to be some Gothic elements to it, some maybe some supernatural elements to it, that gets me going, and then finding like the base humanity of each character within that realm. Those are the things that really get me going for a good story. And sometimes it can be just a song, I hear, and that just triggers an entire like universe for me to write. Yeah.
Right. And Arlo, what do you look for in a project? If it's something new?
There's something new. If I could find either myself within the story, or find people that I relate within the story. with a lot of the projects, like obviously I've been focusing around music because of the purpose of the Black Creators Edition and what I pitched, but in other stuff I've worked with, the story has to catch me, and again, just finding a connection with that with the characters in there, like seeing myself within it, because then I feel that I can be more involved and be more committed to it. And yeah, I think that would probably be the best explanation for it.
Great. How about you, Janessa?
I'm somebody who I get a lot of ideas sporadically and I write them down and then I may come back to them later. But it really has to be something I really care about, I feel. I really, really have to care for me to be really into what I'm doing. It has to be something I'm passionate about, that I want to basically make a difference in some way. It's something really deep inside me that, you know, I connect to the stories in such a deep way that like, it's like I need to. That's when I really feel like it's a project.
You know, it takes so much to get a project made. Like there's, you know, it takes your heart and soul and so much time that, you know, if you don't have that drive and that passion, it just it's almost impossible to move forward, because there's so much involved in making it. It takes so much out of you personally, and you get a lot back too, because the people you're working with energize you, and the story itself energizes you. And when it comes together, it's all very exciting. So is there anything about the creative process that surprises you? I'll just continue with you, Janessa.
I think for me, for this project specifically, my brain is very scrambly. I have so many thoughts going off and so many, just, yeah. But it shocked me that for this project, I think I was just so excited and happy that I got this grant and that it's going to be distributed, that my brain was just like, I need to organize everything and I need to see it. So it really shocked me to how on top of it I was. Once I actually did get the grant, I'm using this like digital whiteboard and I'm just putting all my documents, all my thoughts, completely just laying it out for me, which I usually do visually, but I wasn't expecting to do that with like the document side of things and like breaking everything down. So yeah, that's kind of shocked me.
Great. And what surprised you, Stephen, about the creative processes you're diving in?
I think at first it was my hesitation for the first time. Usually I'm never hesitant about anything when it comes to writing or creating anything. But for this one, because I put such a high goals on this one, it's like I was hesitant to like really let myself go on it. And I'm very like particular about how things are being moved, because I want to make sure everything's so well represented that that's the one thing I've never thought that would be that would come to mind. Because usually I care about all my projects. Like I really do care about every project I make, but for this one I was very more detailed focused than I usually am for a story like this. So I think because I wanted to, I think there's been a different trigger now that's been activated for this project.
Right. So when looking ahead, what do you hope to see that change in the industry, and how do you see yourself being a part of it? I'll start with Arlo.
I think looking ahead, obviously we're in a very interesting time period. The events of May 2020 have shifted a lot of things and led to a lot of organizations recognizing that there needs to be more representation, there needs to be more access to opportunities for our community. And so I think that with the StoryHive Black Creators Edition, again, as I said, I think this is going to open up a whole new, this is essentially a catalyst for a complete change, because often when we think about Toronto. And I think that this is going to create a huge shift, especially BC has been known for film for a number of years, but I don't even think that they've been known for Black film. So that begins to create a change. And Alberta, while we have a lot of film that goes on within Calgary, again, it's one of those things where no one has ever looked towards Alberta as being a place where Black films are being created. So I think that this is the beginning of things, and it's going to be a slow process. It's not going to be an overnight thing, but I think that the projects that come out of this and the continued support of Storyhive and the Black Screen Office, that's what's going to be what shifts our ability to tell our stories and for us to be seen more often. And whether it's TELUS Optic, whether it's CBC, whether it's Netflix or whomever, the more stories we're hearing from here, it begins to change people's perceptions of what it is to be Black in Alberta, in BC. And because there are fascinating stories that we have here that a lot of people can relate with, and even if they can't relate with, there's something about it that resonates with them and allows them to realize that our experiences are just as genuine as and authentic and as needed to be heard as anybody else.
Right. So how about you, Stephen? What's your hope for the future of the film and television industry?
My hope for
and
well,
also,
my hope, like for me as well.
Yeah.
My hope is, my goal is to kind of run the game at a certain point. You know, just like that's really it. That's my hope. I'm just trying to like plant my flag and run that town pretty much. You know, and then open doors for everybody else that you know that has a story to tell, and kind of be able to, you know, lend my hand and you know send the elevator back down for somebody else to come up. You know, that's my goal, to get in that position of like a position of strength and resources to be like, let me find the next guys, let me next woman, the next anybody who wants to tell a story, who hasn't had their chance to tell their story, because I know how it is to be like the underdog and trying to climb up. So that's my 100%.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about, you know, the West versus Toronto or the East versus Toronto, but I think there's, you know, the whole country has a lot to contribute. And I think, you know, even now with our virtual way of communicating, that everybody has access to everything and everybody now. And I think we like, as a country, we need to sort of break down those regional isolationist kind of feel. And because sometimes I don't know if it's self-imposed or if it's a real thing. But you know, right now, as you say, there's so many new opportunities. Doors are opening. People are looking for unique and new kind of content. And I think it would be really, really important to make sure that you're all connected to the whole country. And you know, BC and Alberta are really great places to start. And as you say, there's a lot going on. But while you're there, take advantage of what's happening elsewhere. Not that you have to move, but that there are resources elsewhere that you can also take advantage of. And at the Black Screen Office, we're doing that with, I don't know if you heard about the Rogers BSO Development Fund. That is a fund that's national. We give money to screenwriters to, you know, get paid guild rates to write a script, but it's available to everybody. And I think there are other initiatives like that, and also federal and provincial funding and all that kind of stuff that's that is available. And I think rather than thinking, you know, I'm, you know, in this small place and I'm alone, but you're in a big country and there's lots of opportunities. And while you're making connections here in this program, there'll be opportunities through the National Screen Institute and the other people that they'll bring in, so that you can kind of expand your connections more widely. So I think, again, it's just an exciting time, and it's an exciting program to be in, and it's a great launching pad. And I can't tell you how amazing it is to know that your show is going to be broadcast, because having that first credit, I don't know if it's your first or not, but whatever credit is really important to launching your careers. So I just have one final question for all of you, and that is, who would you love to work with and why? I'll start with Janessa.
This was a hard one because obviously there's so many people that you'd love to work with. But one person that really sticks out for me is Michaela Cole. I really admire her writing skills, her ability to do a lot, but still make such an amazing project in the end. I also really admire her, like, she seems very open and just open to give knowledge. I know that she gave her script with her script notes for Chewing Gum a couple of years ago, and she posted that publicly, and I just thought that was like, that's so cool. Like, thank you. I really admire her for, you know, sticking to her guns and showing a lot of Black women to not give up intellectual property. I really admire her for that. And yeah, just everything about her. I love all of her work, and yeah.
Great. Okay, how about you, Stephen? Who would you love to work with?
That was yeah, because there's so many talented people out there. I think one of my biggest inspirations were Sidney Poitier. You know, God bless him. But he was one of the early in elementary. He was the one who kind of triggered this kind of like rebellious spark in me when I saw In the Heat of the Night, and I was just like, what? Like this is interesting. He's not taking any smack. He's smacking people. Like what? So I was like, when I saw that, I'm like, I got to meet this man one day and work with him. And Sidney Poitier was one of my idols growing up, you know, including Denzel Washington. He was another one. But somebody right now I really want to work with, and it's an odd one, but 50 Cent, Curtis Jackson, you know, because of what he's actually has accomplished as a businessman in entertainment, and him being an executive producer, a Black executive producer in the States who has 5 shows right now running under his watch and like under his company, I think, and just to see that, and the shows and everybody in the show, it's so a plethora of shades in each show. You know, you have the dark skin, light, everybody's just there, and it's just beautiful, and it's like different status quos and everything. And I'm just like, when I saw that, I was like, this is amazing. And also some of the top shows in America and the world. And I'm just like, he's somebody I would love to just like work with and like add to like whatever he's building, and even learn to like build my own like that. That's an incredible feat.
Right. Yep. And how about you, Arlo?
The wish list is long, as we all have. Denzel Washington would probably be the main person that I would want to work with, for multiple reasons, but just what he's able to do on screen and what he's able to bring out is something that I would love to understand, because as I move into the world of directing, I'd love to understand what it takes to actually get that out of an actor to the point where you are just like, wow, this is amazing. And if I were to name a second one, kind of just pivoting off of what Stephen has said, I'm a kid from the hip hop era of like that same era of just like people who were visionaries. And I think Dame Dash is someone who, while he doesn't get credit, was able to foresee a lot of the things that are happening right now within music and film. And I'd love to work with him to just see his process to figure out how is it that you're able to see these things and be able to get things from the industry that make it so that us as Black creatives actually have our compensated properly and even have ownership as well too, because I think that's something that we don't speak about enough within our community as it relates to the entertainment industry is ownership. And he's someone who has had great ideas, but also fought for ownership and representation from a time period where people were afraid to even speak up.
Right. Great, thank you. We have some questions from our audience. This question is from Keenan Duke, and he asks, how do you foresee bridging the American and Canadian Black communities within film? Does anyone want to take that?
I think would be more of to bridge that gap, you'd have to have more Black Canadians kind of having to go to the States to build up their names and then bringing it back over here, and then that's where we kind of build that bridge. Because in the States, you have such a high number of incredible talents. And you'd have to build your own stats over there and bring it back over here and build that over here to kind of create that bridge with them. And I think that'd be the best way of doing it, is just taking that chance and going over.
Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge because, the Americans have a market that actually supports the making of their content. And so there's a huge, industry there that can support itself. Canada, as a small country, needs its cultural policies and government support in order to, maintain that Canadian content, so that we can maintain Canadian content and that we're not necessarily forced to make American content, because it's very different. And, as you say, you can go to the US and make American content and be very successful. But I think it's an interesting question that Keen is asking, because is there a way to have, us, the small Canadian company, a country up against this giant, and how do you bring the two together? I think is a really interesting question, and not just a question, but how do you do it? Janessa or Stephen, do you have some brilliant ideas about how we can bridge that gap?
I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but and it's also just my thoughts and opinions, but I don't think that there's differences between Canadians and Americans, but there's also not a lot of differences. So I think maybe taking away the nationalistic side of storytelling and maybe breaking it down to the experience. It's similar. Can learn from each other. It's not the same, but it definitely is similar. Yeah, and I think that there's just all these stereotypes of Black Americans versus the world a lot of the time. And I feel like it just needs to be talked about more and understood a little bit better. I don't know if that's answering the question, but.
Okay, I have another question from the audience from Eric Sampasa. Do you have business advice for filmmakers starting out? Our filmmakers are all starting out, so that's an interesting. Do you have some advice about how you got where you are in your emerging status, Stephen?
Yeah, I've been a filmmaker. I've been this for about since 2011 almost. I'm almost doing my 10,000 hours are pretty much up at this point. But I've been, so what I would say is, and I think is, I never owned a camera until later on. But I've done at least over 40 projects. So what I would say for emerging filmmakers is, whatever money you have, invest in education first. Yeah. Because the more you know about your craft and how to use you understand the basics. Once you understand the basics at a high level about how to use a camera, you can pretty much use almost any camera. Lighting was, when you know how to light your own stuff, you'll by yourself, you've already gotten yourself, you're 2 steps ahead of most filmmakers. Right. So learning the craft as much as possible is key. Practicing, investing, whatever money you can get, buy a small little dinky camera, and try to see if you can maximize that to its fullest. And with YouTube, you have free education that's available to you as well. Something I was tapping into when I was, when I finished finished film school and then got into and I was using YouTube to kind of learn all these things for free. So business-wise, I'd say invest in your craft first, and then be so good that you're almost too good, and then you can kind of and then you can continue build and then build relationships. Relationships is key, because those are the same relationships. I'm still working on some of the relationships I made 10 years ago, right now. So that's very important. Build relationships. That's the key for me to business as a filmmaker, is just relationships. Know your craft inside out. Learn as many aspects of it as you can. Invest in yourself. Buy yourself some gear. I didn't have a camera, but I hustled to get, hey, can I buy your camera? Can I buy your, I hustled for that, but get yourself your own camera, and then kind of and then from your contacts, learn how to network, and that's going to be your networking skills will pay off in the long run. So that's why I would say network, know your craft, and then everything else will kind of fall into place for you.
One of the things I think people forget about too is that the film business is made up of a lot of people doing a lot of different things. And we often think of producer, writer, director, actor, but there's amazing jobs, that are below the line, like cinematographers and, the head of wardrobe, or, head of carpentry, or any, there's so many things that go into making a film that's way beyond what you see the writer, producer, director does. So I always suggest to people that they check that out too, because there might be things or jobs that are really things that they can also be passionate about and that they have the aptitude for, and not to, to see the whole industry and what the potential is. We only have a few minutes left, so I have this one fantastic question from Facebook. And it is, if you had all the resources in the world, what would you create? I'll throw this to Arlo first.
Wow, that's that's a really big question. If I had all the resources in the world, I'd probably create some sort of amazing docuseries. What it would be about, I don't know, because there's so many stories that. Okay, there is something that a docuseries that would actually explore Canadian hip hop history. I think it is something that is vast. It is something that is being forgotten, in the sense that there's a whole generation that isn't aware of Maestro, Mishi, the Maximum Definitive, like a lot of the people who laid down the foundation for Canadian hip hop artists like Drake or Tory Lanez to have the success that they're having. And I think it also speaks towards just our cultural experience as people within Canada, because someone like Master T, who doesn't get his flowers as much as he should, is part of the reason why so many of us are creating within the media space, because he was the first Black person that a lot of us saw that was in that space and creating and so on. And yeah, so I think that's something that would explore. That would be, because there's so much history to cover that I think that having so much money, I'd be like, let's make this happen.
Yeah. How about you, Janessa?
I'm a huge fan of Octavia E. Butler's work. So if I had all of the resources in the world, I would remake her work into movies. They're super extravagant sci-fi stories that usually center a Black woman, and her mind, it just amazes me. So that would be a dream, to actually be able to make that.
Yes, well, put it out there. And how about you, Stephen?
I think for me, I'd make probably all the resources in the world. There's this play that Orson Welles did years back during the recession, 1930s, I guess. And then it was Black Macbeth. He did a Black Macbeth, but like it was a voodoo Macbeth. You know, and it was and since I was like he's one of my top guys, but since I was a kid and I heard about the Voodoo Macbeth and the play, and I've always wanted to like I see little snippets of it, and I'm just like, man, if I had all the money in the world, I would make it the Voodoo Macbeth, you know, because I feel like that's thinking out the box. That's not saying, you know, let me just make Macbeth and, you know, no, and then put a Black dude as an Englishman, and then that's it. I'm like, no, I'd make it like I'd make this like a Voodoo Macbeth with the sorcerers and all that stuff, and like I don't know, just the fact that he made that and he had the foresight of thinking like, let me just have all these Black actors, let's do this, you know, and push the boundaries. I'm like, that's something I would do, you know, Voodoo Macbeth,
Well,
Orson Welles.
it's great that you're all ready for it. I'll just just put it out there. So that's really fantastic. Those are all really great ideas. So I thank you so much, Janessa, Arlo, and Stephen, for sharing your stories with us, and best of luck with your projects. I can't wait to see them. And I'd like to thank you, the audience, for your questions and for spending your time with us today.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, everybody.